The list of symptoms is extremely long. It's almost similar to like a fungal overload, pathogenic overload, and there's so many related symptoms. Some of the more prominent ones being the body actually growing these fibrils or hairs, the body producing artifacts of some kind, whether they're some people, I've even met a couple of people that are producing plant-like material growing out of their skin. There's actually these non-earthling type of insects being come out of their body. I mean, unbelievable stories that I would never have believed it unless I was standing in their house witnessing this.
The second group of materials found in these environmental samples is unidentifiable fibers. And I really want you to appreciate the meaning of unidentifiable. These fibers have been sent to sophisticated laboratories, and there is nothing in the databases that match them. These are fibers, we could say, that do not exist in nature. People around the world are developing lesions on their skin that ooze and produce fibers. This is known as Morgellons syndrome. Tissue samples cultured from ordinary people without this ailment contain and grow the very same fibers. When these fibers are cultured, they produce colonies of filaments. You can see the extension filaments. And these colonies continue to grow and reproduce, branching out into more filaments and more colonies. The filament cultures can be grown from saliva samples, tissue from the skin, mucus, urine, blood, from animals and people, regardless of the presence of the Morgellons condition. So where do these fibers or filaments come from? Airborne environmental samples that were collected by Clifford Carnicom in 2000, the year 2000, gathered at high altitude on a mountain in New Mexico, showed the presence of those fibers, whose structure matches exactly the tubular filaments showing up in our blood, tissues, and skin. Additionally, the samples collected by Mr. Carnicom showed what he calls, and was called in biology, desiccated erythrocytes. This is a multisyllabic term, but it means dried red blood cells. So, why are dried red blood cells in the air? You could say that this woman, who does not want her real name used, is in the grasp of something she has no control of. It opens up her body, which oozes and bleeds, followed by great pressure, agonizing pain, and then the release of stuff. This, for instance, is on her shoulder. As a giant lesion on her lower body began to close, a new one opened up on her shoulder. It's as though the condition must express itself, must manufacture its stuff. Within the craters are holes, and inside the holes are deep tubes. You could call them chambers. Here are cross-sections of the tubes. She tells me her blood is no longer liquid. It is goopy, gelatinous, filled with the thick, viscous material being made inside her. She believes her blood has become synthetic. And deep in the tubes she finds sacks of tissue containing forms. Here is one such emergence. A tubular mass from inside the crater. That isn't a blood vessel. It's all part of the materials. Here's another mass, a cross-section of a tube. I'm operating on myself, she told me. These tubes are running through my body. The stuff wants to come out. It feels like someone's digging into you with a screwdriver as the tubes grow inside you. Here are more materials, a string of fibers and sacs, much like a knotted rope, and a ropey mass that's part biological with a budding joint. The range of materials is incredible. Here's a tissue sac attached to purple fibers and dark metallic fibers twisted like cables. Fiber-laced gel with an insect inside it and a colored fiber cluster. Here are more insects, and a quote. The bugs are in tubes. I pull the tissue out. The tissue is like a tube. I open up the tissue with tweezers. I found ants, moths, spiders, flies, caterpillars. Some insects are hybrids. They're crossed. They don't look right. This was a green bug that was inside a tube. He was alive. He was living in the tube inside my body. His wings were flapping. He was the size of a gnat. He had eyes. There are also indistinct forms that look like seahorses, Egyptian hieroglyph heads. They have embryonic legs and arms. She told me they're 2 to 3 inches long. I can take pictures of them with a regular camera. Here's a purple creature like a centipede. There were 2 that came out together, she told me, and ran off to different parts of the room. The bugs are alive. I can see their eyes. They look at me as though they want to live, to stay alive, saying, "Please let me live." In addition, this woman has clusters of pink fibers, very much like those cultured by Clifford Carnicom, whose research shows not only the incredible hardiness of the fibers, but their production of transbiological forms, meaning they contain engineered materials that have properties of the various kingdoms of life, bacteria, archaea, and eukarya. I explained this in my previous talk. This woman's body has emitted twigs and leaves, as well as metallic forms that are etched or engraved, bearing letters or symbols. Just last month, a green ball the size of a pea encased with fibrous growths came out of her. This was not inside a tube. Its surface was textured, she said, like painted styrofoam. There was also this red textured donut the size of an aspirin. August 9th, these 3 spheres came out, stuck together with a kind of bioglue. She has no idea what they are or what they contain. They could be biotechnological underneath their coating, and they were accompanied by a fiber. Reported by nearly all who have Morgellons are the complete loss of body energy and the stubborn fibers of all colors that resist pulling, that won't burn in a match flame. And about the fibers, if you look at American money, US dollar bills, especially new ones, they have colored fibers running through them. Jan Smith compared the fibers in money to her Morgellons fibers and found them to be pretty much identical. Ignited with a blue butane flame, they both release a payload, a drop of material contained inside. And she used mirrored tweezers to pull a fiber from a $20 bill to experiment with it.
Because nanoparticulates are potentially self-replicating, the cost of producing them is actually quite negligible. As for the question as to why the perpetrators would be spraying themselves, well, that answer is in fact a very simple one. These people want transhumanism. In fact, when one truly considers the transhumanist agenda and it begins to sink in that chemtrails seem to consist of nanoparticulates or smart dust, then the last piece of the puzzle falls snugly into place. And it is far from inconceivable that were the global population to be infused with programmable nanoparticulates, then when these tiny machines are switched on, they will simply do what they are programmed to do. And that what this may be may also be largely due to what other genetic codes have first been introduced into the host.
We have more than tripled the numbers of doses of vaccines we're giving our children in the last quarter century.
Up to 15 by the age of 6.
Why are so many highly vaccinated children so sick?
The elites, those who can afford to carry out practices such as chemtrails, generally don't eat processed or genetically altered food, and it is extremely unlikely that they are subject to the same rigorous vaccination regime as the general public. If mankind is indeed ingesting nanoparticulates without their general knowledge, then how might such machines be controlled or switched on? In answer to this question, one only needs to realize that it is now a long-established fact that when anything occurs within the human experience, ultimately the information travels around the body electromagnetically. All our 5 senses, along with any emotional information, is all interpreted by the brain via these electromagnetic signals. Therefore, it is also an established fact that man can be influenced and even controlled via electromagnetism.